so I've put the second piece in its position, and we're going to go ahead and weld that in. So let me just get my hood. Do a couple of tacks first. Put a full weld in there now. I would normally weld opposite edges, but this one is already locked in solid because of the rear beam being fully welded in. Plus, we still have clamps holding everything in place as well. So I'm not that worried about any kind of warpage or twist. Yeah, it's good and solid. That's it for welding those in. We're going to let that cool off for a moment, and then we'll start placing all the plates for our casters. They'll get welded on each of the four corners. So we'll come back and do that in a moment. All right, so we're back now. We're going to go ahead and weld these anchor plates for the casters in. I put 4 just scrap screws in there to protect my threads when I'm welding. I've got it clamped down. I've got it offset by 1/4 inch from the edge, so I've got a good place to put a bead. I'm going to be welding it across here and across here. Do that to all 4 of them. I'll show you this one, and then off camera I'll do the rest. So we'll go ahead and spot the corners. I'll go ahead and fully weld it. Alright, let me remove the clamp to do the front here. Alright, nice solid welds. I'm going to go ahead, I'll do the other 3 off camera, and then we'll come back when we're ready to flip this over and start doing our verticals. Alright, so I got all 4 of the mounts for the casters welded on. I flipped the piece over, which was, I probably should have filmed it. It was actually quite funny. I had to climb up with a ladder, flip it, walk on the table, flip it around. Would have been smart to have somebody help me do it, but I'm stubborn, and that's why I need this crane to begin with, so that I can lift these things myself. But anyhow, what we're going to do now, I've already measured and gotten my center line, marked out 4 inches. I've got my heavy-duty magnet clamps here to just help me hold it in position. I'm going to have to hold this up because remember we cut it at a 15-degree angle. So I'll get that tacked in, and then we'll make and measure for our brace. Now I'm thinking for the brace we'll probably use a piece of 2-inch stock, but we'll see. We'll see where that ends up. And a nice 1/4 inch thick wall, 2-inch square tubing, I think we'll do it. So let me get this in position and let me get it welded. Let me turn on my welder before I lift it up, so that I'm ready to go. And let me make sure that I've got this where I want it and straight before I start welding it. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to undo. And again, these are not really holding it up. They're kind of just helping me get it in position and keep it in position so it doesn't shift on me when I'm under my hood. Just want to make sure that I'm truly parallel to the line that I'd marked there. Alright, let's go ahead and tack this. through some really thick tacks that remove this magnet so I can reattach the front there. All right, let me grab my square real quick and let's check this for level. And I think we got it pretty good. The square's a little too big to get in there. Let me grab my smaller one. And yeah, I think we're right on the money. We're square. So let's go ahead and finish welding that. And on this one, I'm going to weld all the way around, and then I'm going to do a second pass, because it is very important that this is strong, because this is one of the joints that's going to hold the majority of the weight. Okay, those are a couple of good first passes. Let me run one across the back here. And let me let that cool, and I'll run another one right away while it's still nice and heated. Going a little bit wider on this pass. Now this crane, I'm designing it to lift in excess of 3 tons. But I don't think I'll ever use the full capacity of it, just because I typically don't lift things that heavy, and gosh, 6,000 pounds would be a challenge to move around here anyhow, but I want it to be overkill for what I'm going to be doing, so 3 tons certainly will be overkill. And we're doing the second passes over there. And the second pass on this side now. We still have to weld the front, so we're going to have to flip it over to do that. Now I should really be wearing my welding jacket because I'm doing a lot of long hot welds, but I'm in Miami, Florida, and right now inside the shop the temperature is reading 98 degrees, and we've got an excess of 80% humidity right now, so putting on a jacket would probably kill me. But anyhow, we're in good shape. So we're going to get the measurements now for our rear piece here. So I've got a piece of pipe here just to give you an idea. But we're going to want to come in with a piece like this just to give some bracing. So I'm thinking 2-inch square sock will do it. So let me dig up a piece of 2-inch square, and we'll go ahead and make that piece and weld that in there for our support. Then we're also going to go ahead and make some braces coming from the sides of this out diagonally this way, so we have a little bit of lateral reinforcement as well. All right, so let me get some pieces, we'll cut them, and we'll come back to weld those in. All right, so I've got a piece of 2-inch, 1/4 wall as my bracing here. The angle I just traced by leaning the piece up against it, top and bottom, traced the angles I needed. The long angle at the top I cut on my big bandsaw. The bottom angle was just a very small amount we needed to take off, so I did that on my belt grinder. So we're going to go ahead and tack this in, and then we're going to find some materials to make our side bracing. But let's go ahead and tack it first. All right, so we've got that piece nicely tacked in. Let me go ahead and take this off before I hit my head again. That's why these welding helmets are nice with a hard surface. They protect you a bit. So now I'm thinking here we might want to use something like 3-inch angle iron to come out to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and find 2 pieces for that. Again, I'll do the same thing. I'll lean them up against it, mark the angles I need. This is going to be a compound angle because it's going to be this angle to the side, but also the 15 degrees leaning backwards. So it'll be a combination, again, of using the bandsaw and the grinder to finalize that. But let me go find those, get them cut, and then we'll come back. And once we have those, we'll spot weld those, finish welding all of this, and then we'll start working on the top here on the pivot point for the arm. All right, I'll see you in a bit. Well, I didn't find the angle iron I was originally looking for, but I did have in my scrap pile some 3" by 1/4" flat bar. So this is going to actually work perfectly. It's a lot easier because we don't need to do any special bevels to it. It'll sit flat here and sit flat to the frame and give us our lateral stability. So we're going to go ahead and tack that in, and we'll move on from there. I'm going to go ahead and finish weld the bottom here right away. The top part we'll get when we put this on the ground. We'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side here. Alright, good. Those are nice and solid. Next thing we're going to need to do is actually move this thing to the ground so we can get to welding some of the other components on it. We need to still weld the front of this, and we need to put our bracket up on the top, which is going to hold our arm. So I'm going to go ahead and get it situated, then we'll come back and we'll weld those areas. Alright, so I brought my ladder back over and flip this piece down so I could go ahead and weld it here. So we're going to go ahead and put 2 welds, one on top of the other here to strengthen this. Alright, that's the first pass, and yeah, it was blowing out a little bit, so I had to slow down. I'm going to go ahead and lay a nice fat bead over it now, and then we can grind that smooth. But we got real good penetration. It definitely bonded on both ends. So I'm going to go ahead and run over it again now. Oh yeah, that filled it in nicely. Let me just put a little bit more on the 2 corners, and then we're done. Alright, that ties it together nicely. So we're done with that. I'm going to come on down, I'm going to climb back down, and we'll weld the 2 ends over there. So what I've done over here now, I've set a washer on each side as a spacer so that we don't pinch on our arm when we mount the arm. I'm just going to put a little spot weld on it to hold it in place. That will then have the plate welded over it, so it'll secure it then. And that has it, so let's pull the clamps off of there. Now, shut this down. Just going to quickly hit this with the grinder. Alright, that should be all we need there, and we will get this set up with our arms. So these are the plates that are going to hold our arm in place. I'm going to go ahead and, to make it easier, mount a piece of wood from behind so they're easier to line up. Of course, here gravity's working against me, but we'll get that in place, and that ensures that the 2 side pieces will mount and sit evenly. So we'll start with this one on the far side here. We'll go ahead and put a clamp on it, and I want to try to clamp right where I've got that washer. I come a little bit lower, right about there. Now we'll get the other one in position, but we're also going to put the bolt through it to ensure that it lines up properly. What I'm going to do now is just kind of tweak them so that they're lining up properly on the edge here. Because we want them so they sit flush with the top and flush with the back. And this spacing will give us a nice area to fill with a weld. So this will be super strong. Let me just check my measurements and make sure that we're straight. Quarter. Yep, and we're perfect. All right. Let me go ahead and get the welder set back up, and we'll go ahead and tack weld this in place. I'm going to start just by putting a couple of tack welds around, and then we'll fully weld it later. Okay, those tacks look good. All right, we're going to bump up the power on the welder a little bit, so because we're welding 1/2-inch material here. I'll bump it up, increase my wire feed a little bit as well, so we can come in here and fill these in nicely. Let's remove these clamps. Now I'm going to leave this bolt in here just for a little bit of insurance. And we still look nice and flush, so we're good to go. I'm going to add another tack down below here, which I couldn't do before. All right, so I'm going to start by welding the inside here. All right, those seem to be nice and tight, very solid. Let me shut this off for a second here. You have to let that cool, and then when we get the machine down, when we get the crane down, we'll be able to lay it on its side to weld these sides. Because filling as much as we are, it's a little hard to do that when it's being pulled down by gravity at the same time. But we're very secure now, so we have nothing to worry about there. We're going to go ahead and get this thing off the table. So to do that, I'm going to have to roll it outside and get to the gantry crane, and I'll move the cameras so we can see that. All right, we'll be back in a few minutes. All right, so I've gone ahead, as I lifted it up, I put the wheels on so we can move this around the side.